Thank you guys so much for coming out. Thank you so much to Congressman Schiff for joining us. These students all came here to lobby for HR 2324. Thank you so much for your leadership on that. We're very concerned about the authorization for the use of military force. Congressman has also done some great recent work on drones, and FCNL is just so grateful for your leadership. So maybe you could say a few words to the students about why AUMF matters to you and what you think about this bill going forward. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you very much for coming and braving the elements to come knock on doors, and I think it's wonderful that you are so active and involved. You're off to a very good start, but I particularly appreciate the help with the AUMF legislation. It's a pretty heavy lift, as you might be gathering from some of your meetings, but obviously an extremely important issue. Both the AUMF and the drone issue, I think your visit is very timely. The President in May, as you probably know, gave a major speech on this subject, and one of the things he said was that this war, like all wars, must end. And it's difficult in the nature of the current struggle to see when that end would come and what the future will look like. This hasn't been a traditional war of the sort that we've engaged in the past, where you have a VE day or a VJ day, and I think because those issues are tough doesn't mean that we can avoid them. The authorization to use military force that was passed in the days after 9/11 was really designed to meet an enemy that looked different than the enemy today, and it should have been sunsetted, but it wasn't. But the failure to sunset that has meant that it is increasingly precarious as a legal basis for the use of force against organizations that didn't exist at the time of 9/11. And now we have the added complication that, for example, one of the most violent jihadi organizations, ISIS, operating in Syria and Iraq, has been formally excommunicated from Al-Qaeda. And it would be a bizarre result if the leadership of Al-Qaeda could decide on its own who the Congress was authorizing the administration to use force against. So the AUMF is plainly outdated, and the more difficult question beyond the one that you've come to advocate, and that is for the repeal of the existing AUMF, is what follows? What comes next, and how do we handle the continuing threats against the country? That's a very important debate that the President, I think, helped kindle in his speech in May, but one to which there are no easy answers. One component of that debate is the use of these UAVs or drones, and I think one way of holding ourselves accountable and also of setting a transparent example for other countries, because other countries will develop this technology, is to be more open about how often they're used and when there are casualties, to be public about it, to point out not only the combatants that may be taken off the battlefield, but the loss of innocent civilian life that is sometimes unavoidable. By making that public, I think that we hold ourselves accountable. If the program is as successful as some advocate, then we should be willing to stand by it in an open and transparent way. I also think it's particularly important in the case of an American citizen, where under normal circumstances someone would have the right to face their accusers and have a jury trial, and that there be due process when the President makes a decision that an American is an enemy combatant that can be taken off the battlefield by the use of a drone. And so I've been advocating that we require there be an independent red team analysis, basically an independent eyes on the evidence and the criteria the administration is using, so that the President alone or one element of the administration can't make a decision that grave without an independent judgment. And I think that independent judgment should be published sometime thereafter, so that those who are writing an opinion recommending taking an American off the battlefield without a trial or any other due process will have to defend their work product to history and to the country. So those are some of the important issues that we're wrestling with, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate your coming and your advocacy. I think it's fantastic. I was at a convention out in California recently. We had our Democratic convention, and I was talking with someone about the activism of young people, and they were telling me, I guess, that there was analyses done of what motivates people to become involved in civic life and charitable work and advocacy like you're doing. And the strongest correlation was that their parents were advocates and involved. And I don't know how many of you that is true for, but if so, you owe a debt, and I owe a debt to your folks as well.
Do you have any recommendations as to the type of actions we can take in order to bring the AOMF issue to the priority list of congressmen like you?
Well, what you're doing is really the most effective thing, and that is there are various ways that you can communicate with your representatives, emails and faxes and through social media, but nothing really takes the place of face-to-face meetings and putting a face on the issue. It's best if you can meet with your own representatives, and I know you come from all over, because members tend to be much more responsive to what their constituents have to say than folks that live in other people's districts. That's not always possible, but you really, I know it's time and money and energy to come here, but that's really the most effective advocacy there is.